Now at 5, voters in Kansas and Missouri head to the polls to fill local positions and decide tax issues.
President Biden says the U.S. has plans to reduce methane emissions and cut down on deforestation. I'm Skyler Henry at the White House with the announcements from day 2 of the Climate Change Summit in Scotland.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
It's Election Day in Missouri and Kansas with voters deciding several local issues. This is KOAM News at 5. Voters in Joplin take to the polls to decide a tax issue. The ballot question would impose a local use tax equal to the local sales tax. The use tax would apply to online purchases made by sellers outside of Missouri. Still have time to vote. Polls in Missouri close at 7. In Kansas, several counties and municipalities are voting on local school boards, council, and city positions, as well as some tax issues. Polls in Kansas also close at 7. We're going to have the latest results tonight on KOAM News at 10 and on our website, KOAMnewsnow.com. Elsewhere, a lot of eyes are on the Virginia governor's race as voters choose between Republican Glenn Youngkin and Democrat Terry McAuliffe. The Republican has seen a rise in his polling numbers as President Biden's approval ratings have dropped. Former Virginia Governor McAuliffe's campaign has tied Youngkin to former President Trump. New Jersey is the other state where voters will pick a governor. Phil Murphy is trying to become the first incumbent Democrat to win re-election since 1977. A lot of clouds out there at the moment. Nick Kelly.
At least for much of the day, Dow has been relatively on the dry side. Hasn't changed the fact that even though it looks dry from 7th and Rangeline, it was another kind of cool day with temperatures staying in the 40s throughout the course of the day. But as advertised, as we got the late afternoon underway, here comes our next batch of rain. This is slight to moderate rain, the more moderate rain deeper into green country, certainly as you work closer to Claremore and Tulsa. But this next batch of rain ready to roll on in is the result of a quick upper level wave that was sitting out in California the other day. It's working through Kansas now and trying to actually cause a little bit of snow out in western parts of Kansas. No snow for the evening, but it's going to feel cool for sure. Mid to upper 40s is where we sit right now. And as long as the cloud cover and the rain chances hang tough down, we'll only drop back into the upper 30s for tonight. But we are going to change things for the better over the next few days. We'll break down the forecast in a bit. See you then. The Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, has changed the guidelines for substitute teachers in the state. DESE is making it work by offering a 20-hour online course for substitutes to take. Until now, the only way you could get certified as a substitute teacher in Missouri was to have at least 60 college credit hours. Local districts have been feeling the pinch of the substitute shortage and hope this new option will open the doors for more subs.
That'll help a little bit. It's still up to us to, when people come in to apply to be a sub, it's important that we're putting good people in the classroom with our kids, not just a warm body. So that's the key right now of having good subs for our students.
Tonight at 6, we're going to hear more on how the shortage is impacting local districts, and we'll hear from a current substitute teacher. President Biden held a news conference on his final day of the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland. Delegates from almost 200 countries are attending the summit, which runs until next Friday. Skyler Henry reports.
On his final day in Glasgow, Scotland, President Biden fielded tough questions about the U.S. commitment to tackling climate change.
America showed up and decided to lead and laid out clearly what it wished to do.
Earlier, the president announced a plan to cut U.S. methane emissions by 2030 by cracking down on all of the nation's oil and gas wells.
100 nations have signed on to reduce methane by 30% by 2030. And methane is 25 times more toxic to the environment than CO2.
Leaders from developing nations made a plea for support.
We are drowning, and our only hope is the life ring you are holding.
And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged wealthier countries to follow through on their promises, including a plan to end deforestation.
Let's end this great global chainsaw massacre.
Back here in Washington, President Biden's own domestic agenda, which includes a record amount of money for fighting climate change, faces objections from members of his own party. Moderate Democratic Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia expressed concerns over the cost of the $1.75 trillion social spending plan. The measure could come up for a vote this week.
None of us should ever misrepresent to the American people what the real cost of legislation is.
President Biden also met with Britain's Prince Charles on the sidelines of the climate summit. A senior administration official says the two leaders discussed the importance of global cooperation in tackling climate change. Skyler Henry, CBS News, the White House.
During his remarks, President Biden also called out China and Russia, two of the world's biggest polluters, for failing to show up for that summit. The White House is laying out a new strategy aimed at working to prevent active military and veteran suicides. The plan includes a federal focus on firearms dealers. The Department of Justice is working to finalize a rule requiring them to make secure storage or safety devices available for purchase. The ATF will also issue a best practices guide to all federal firearms dealers. President Biden also announced a federal push to get those at risk of suicide to voluntarily limit their access to anything that can be used for harm. Still ahead, a new study about women in corporate America.
Women are making strides in the workplace, but it comes at a cost. I'm Elise Preston with a new report on increasing burnout and why women of color are losing ground.
And next in Health Watch, a CDC advisory committee weighs whether to approve Pfizer's Covid19 vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. Topping today's Health Watch, a CDC advisory committee votes to approve Pfizer's pediatric Covid-19 vaccine for children ages 5 to 11. Final approval from the CDC is expected soon, which would make the shot available to some 28 million American children. Michael George reports.
A CDC advisory panel has voted to recommend use of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine in children ages 5 to 11.
The clinical trial demonstrated that the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is safe, immunogenic, and efficacious in children 5 through 11 years of age.
More than 67,000 American children under age 17 have been hospitalized for COVID infections since August of 2020. While the CDC says the most severe COVID outcomes are rare, there have been 94 deaths in kids 5 to 11.
The risk is too high and too devastating to our children, and far higher than for many other diseases for which we vaccinate children.
Some parents say access to a pediatric vaccine will lift a heavy burden.
It'll make life that much easier to be able to take the kids places, to not feel so worried about, do we have a mask, do we not have a mask, can we be around these friends and their kids.
A recent survey shows only 27% of parents say they'll vaccinate their kids right away. A third say they'll wait and see how it goes.
I recognize that parents are nervous. This is not the time to be complacent.
Some parents are concerned about the rare risk for myocarditis or heart inflammation.
It's a very important thing to recognize that the very low risk of myocarditis with vaccination pales in comparison to the very high risk for severe heart disease related to COVID and MIS-C.
Pfizer already began shipping millions of doses to help pediatricians and health professionals prepare to get shots in arms. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
Today's meeting was the last opportunity to limit vaccine access to high-risk children only, as some on last week's FDA panel preferred. The CDC estimates about half of adult COVID survivors were unvaccinated as of August. The agency recommends even previously infected people get the shot, citing a modest but significant increase in protection against infection. Screen time among American adolescents skyrocketed during the pandemic. A study in JAMA Pediatrics found the average daily total doubled from under 4 hours before the pandemic to nearly 8 hours during the pandemic. The study did not include school-related screen time. Taking a zinc supplement might help curb symptoms of respiratory tract infections such as coughing and congestion. Researchers in Australia say studies showed symptoms also seemed to clear up sooner with the use of certain zinc supplements compared to placebos. And that is a look at today's health news. A little bit later, the Department of Justice sues to prevent the merger of two major U.S. book publishers.
But first, rain chances are back in play for this evening and tonight, but will change things for the better over the next few days. Forecast up next. We were dry to start the day out, but boy, that did not change much in terms of how temperatures were impacted. It was played out just the same way as it did the other day. Highs in the mid 40s. That was about it. We dropped back into the upper 30s to near 40 this morning. We did a little bit better today, though, since we were dry in Joplin for much of the day, but still 47 degrees. That is well below normal highs, which should be right around 60 degrees. Again, not much wiggle room in terms of temperatures because of all the cloud cover that has remained in play. And even though we started the day out on a dry note overall, once we hit about 10, 11 o'clock, and certainly this afternoon, you can see the next round of rain already making headway as it comes at us from the west. But ever since the rain chances picked up the other day, this has not been a big soaker. This was not expected to be a big soaker in terms of heavy rainfall, but still, anyone that saw rain, it's averaging out to about 1/10 of an inch with some more chances actually working in right now. This time last night, though, we were tracking some areas of rain in southwestern Missouri primarily, but the emphasis has shifted a little bit this time around. We're dry until you get to about let's say McDonald County, Pineville, and certainly down in the northwest Arkansas. You can see the heavier rains, though, extending through northeast Oklahoma before you get to the heavier downpours near Ponca City, Wichita, Kingman, and about Medicine Lodge back in south central Kansas. That's rain that'll work in and stick around throughout the course of the evening, but for the time being, at least we're dry at 7th and Range Line, mostly cloudy, temperatures at 47. We've lightened up on that east breeze a little bit, so for now it feels like 47, but whenever that breeze picks up, you can count on it feeling maybe 5 to about 8 degrees cooler than the actual air temperature. Most of us are in the mid to upper 40s right now. When you factor in the wind, not much of a variance in terms of wind chill factors, but it still makes it feel like 41 in the Wada, 48 in Pittsburgh, 46 in downtown Joplin. In general, we're going to stay in the 40s, mid to lower 40s throughout the course of the evening. And eventually we'll be back right where we were this morning, upper 30s to near 40 degrees. So pretty much a repeat of last night going into tonight, with the lone exception being more rain chances working into the area despite high pressure working across northern parts of Missouri. That's not scrubbing out the impact of this upper low that was over out in California. It's working into Kansas now. It's actually cold enough that it's dropping or trying to mix in a little bit of snow out in far western parts of Kansas. None of that little bit of snow works into here, but you can definitely count on the rain chances for about the southwestern half of the viewing area going into tonight and into Wednesday morning, as overnight lows drop back near 39. Fortunately, though, once we get past the morning drive and the morning in general, we're going to finally start to dry things out and eventually see some more returning sun tomorrow. Doesn't change much in terms of temperatures, though. 39 in the morning, 45 by noon, afternoon highs right about 48 degrees. Fortunately, we're dry going into Thursday, despite the future track wanting to pop up a few showers. But look at the temperatures Thursday morning, into the mid 30s. If we hold on to the cloud, we'll have to deal with our first frost for Thursday morning before we bounce back to 52. Friday morning could start mostly clear, so we'll have to watch the lows near 34. Maybe a couple of spots could see a light freeze, but 56 Friday, 60s returning Saturday and Sunday, and back near 70 early next week down before another shot of rain by Tuesday.
It's funny, the idea of 70 suddenly seems balmy almost. It's so chilly.
A heat wave is coming.
Yeah, relatively speaking. Thanks, Nick. Coming up, American Airlines cancels more flights today. First, though, we honor a local veteran. Mary Morrison served in the U.S. Air Force Nurse Corps from 1991 to 1995. Pittsburgh native was stationed in Saudi Arabia and Bosnia, and we salute Captain Mary Morrison, a four-state hero. Topping today's Consumer Watch, the Department of Justice sues to stop publishing company Penguin Random House from acquiring publisher Simon & Schuster, the two of the 5 biggest publishers in the U.S. The DOJ argues that combining them would give Penguin Random House too much power over content, authorship, and author compensation. The two companies call the merger, quote, a pro-consumer, pro-author, and pro-bookseller transaction. Hundreds of cancellations are still plaguing passengers of American Airlines. The air carrier canceled more than 400 flights yesterday, and it's canceling flights again today. That's according to airline tracker FlightAware. All told, the airline has canceled more than 2,000 flights since Friday. The carrier blames poor weather and staffing issues. A new report shows there's been an improvement in people's driving behavior. According to the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, Unsafe driving habits like running red lights, driving under the influence, or drowsy driving have declined over the past 3 years. But some drivers admit to still taking part in some no-nos behind the wheel, like speeding and not using hands-free speakers when making calls on their cell phone. A comprehensive study finds women in corporate America made strides at nearly every level of U.S. companies last year, but the pandemic continues to cause increasing burnout. And even after a year of focus on racial diversity and inclusion, women of color still face more challenges and get less support. Reporter Elise Preston takes a look at women in the workplace.
Chicago media entrepreneur Olivia Mancuso is her own boss.
I get to decide what my labor is worth, and that is huge to me.
Mancuso left a mid-level management job this past March after feeling overworked, undercompensated, and stressed out. It even took a toll on her body.
I was losing clumps and clumps of hair. I just could not believe what I was seeing.
This year's Women in the Workplace report from McKinsey and Lean In found women are increasingly burned out, and more so than men. 1/3 said they considered leaving or downshifting their careers.
I think we should look at that as a bellwether for how women are feeling and the toll it's taking on them.
Report authors Alexis Krivkovich and Rachel Thomas say women have stepped up during the pandemic, particularly in leadership roles, but only a quarter of companies are recognizing the extra effort.
The big risk for companies in this moment is that they unwind the progress they've gained on women in leadership and lose these extraordinary leaders when they need them most.
The study also found women of color are losing ground at every step in the corporate pipeline, and they continue to have a worse experience at work.
I've worked at places where I was the only Black woman.
Nikki Ivy consults tech startups. Ivy says she was passed over for a promotion at her previous job and endured frequent microaggressions.
I was repeatedly told that my demeanor was intimidating to people. I was speaking to them just the way I'm speaking to you right now.
And while a large majority of white employees now view themselves as allies of women of color, there's little follow through.
That gap between intent and action is something that companies really need to address.
Action that could improve the workplace for everyone. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
The study authors say pandemic work from home flexibility shows companies are capable of pivoting quickly. The National Crime Insurance Bureau is out with its list of most stolen vehicles for 2020. Last year, the most stolen was a Ford full-size pickup, followed by the Chevy full-size pickup. Also popular among car thieves were the Honda Civic and Accord, with the Toyota Camry rounding out the top 5. Auto thefts surged last year from 2019, due in part to the economic downturn caused by the pandemic. Final check of the forecast next. Cbs Evening News. Opening statements in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, accused of shooting protesters in Wisconsin. Then on KOAM News at 6. We're going to have more on the issues facing Kansas and Missouri voters today. Plus, an area substitute teacher talks about a new substitute teacher program in Missouri. And a shakeup in the Kansas Community College Football Conference impacts a local school. Stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. Now, tower cams like the one we have at Joplin 7th and Rangeline are handy to show weather and traffic. Once in a while, we get a glimpse of a bird or insect crawling on the camera. But we have to say this tower cam in Brazil has us beat. That curious critter that keeps peeking into the camera lens, yeah, that's a parrot, all right. A turquoise-fronted Amazon parrot, to be precise. You might occasionally see them as pets around here, but in South America, you'll find them in the wild, and apparently, at least once in a while, getting 15 minutes of fame by photobombing a tower cam.
I think a lot more variety of animals bombing the tower cams compared to our usual bout of birds and wasps.
Once in a while we'll see a wasp, a spider, a bird peeking into ours, but no parrots.
Yeah, we constantly welcome our new insect overlords, but not the parrots yet.
Not yet, no. The weather.
Yeah, we're going to welcome any better changes on the way. We just got to get past tonight's rain chances and tomorrow morning's rain chances. Then we're drying out for the afternoon tomorrow and drying out for the weekend. But 49 Wednesday, we'll be back in the 50s Thursday.
Thanks for joining us. CBS Evening News is next, and of course, we'll be right back here at 6. We'll see you then. Let's make it a great evening.